Nebraska is bowl game winners for the first time since 2015. We will talk about the Pinstripe Bowl win and the 7-6 season coming up.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, head to FanDuel.com to get started.
Okay, live from New York, here we are. It's
Saturday
night. Nebraska has won the Pinstripe Bowl 20-15. It got a little bit too close for comfort at the end, but the Huskers are a winner, and Rahmir Johnson is the story of the day. I think that was what we knew when the game ended, and then what Matt Rhule had to say, and we'll play that clip in a few minutes. By the way, Mitch Sherman from The Athletic here with you on the Locked On Nebraska pod, joined by Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone in Omaha. We'll play that Rhule clip for you in a couple of minutes here, talking about Rahmir Johnson, Nebraska's sixth-year senior running back, playing in the shadow of his home neighborhood, Harlem, here in New York City at Yankee Stadium on a cold, wet Saturday. He was the star. He made the play at the end to get Nebraska to victory when it looked like the Huskers wanted to drop this thing one more time, like we've seen so often. Connor, a feel-good day all around, despite the score being a little bit too close. It was 20-2 with 7 minutes to go in the game, and we finish up 20-15. But Nebraska has a winning season for the first time since 2016.
Yeah, it almost felt like it had to sort of end that way, right? It's like it's gonna get tight. Nebraska built themselves a nice little cushion, 20-2. Boston College really wasn't doing anything. Countless fourth down stops for Nebraska's defense throughout the entire game. The defense was really, really good in the slop of Yankee Stadium, and turned them away multiple times on the game. And then all of a sudden, what happens? Well, first a blocked extra point that gets taken back for 2 points, and you start to get queasy, and then a blocked punt that is scored on a play or two later, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, is this the Iowa game again? What is happening? But Nebraska with an opportunity with the lead and an opportunity to close the game out, did it. And they did not leave it in the other team's hands. And so it felt like it's kind of poetic in that way. I would have preferred it to not. Husker fans would have preferred it to not end that way. But it did. And it almost feels mildly better because of it, maybe.
Yeah, there's some closure. There's like a circular effect. We're going to talk about special teams at some point in the show. We're going to talk about Dylan Raiola, who had some things happen on the final drive, the final 4-minute drive that were interesting. Yeah. Let's first talk about Rahmir Johnson, who ran the ball for 11 yards on 4th and 1 to get to exactly 1,000 yards in his career. He finishes with 1,000 yards rushing in his career. He scored the first rushing touchdown of his senior season in the first quarter, a 4-yard run with his old youth team, the Harlem Jets, looking on from the end zone seating or the infield seating, whatever it is at Yankee Stadium. Family also looking on, which is even more poignant when you hear Matt Rhule talk about this. Here's the clip.
I'll probably get a little bit emotional saying this, so please forgive me, but Rahmir has never allowed anyone really to know what happened to him this year. But a year ago, he got hurt and missed the whole season. And I sat there with him in my office, as he wept, and the opportunity came to come back this year, and he decided to come back with really no guarantees. His mom was really, really sick for the whole season. I asked him to go home. President Gold intervened and got us in contact with doctors here that were taking care of his mom as she was preparing for hospice. And I asked Rahmir to go home, and he wouldn't go home. He had to play that game. He had to stay here with his teammates. Went home on the bye week. Asked me not just to tell anyone. He didn't want to be a distraction. Only let Emmett know. And he lost his mom. He lost his mom in November. And, I mean, those are the kids that got me into coaching. Those are the kids men that keep me in coaching. And he's awesome. And so for him to go out there and do that today, for him to have that run, for us to have to get him out of the stands to get him to accept the MVP trophy. But it was never about him. So you forgive me for that. But I told him I was going to share that because it's never been about him. He loved his mother. He lost his mother, and he cares about this team. I think this is a fitting end for him. So I hope he wears his pads home on the subway and goes to his apartment, takes that MVP trophy, and I don't know, takes it out tonight somewhere. So with that was long. I'm sorry, but I love that kid. I love those seniors, and I'm grateful for them. So with that, I'll take your questions.
That's pretty cool.
You don't get a story like that every year.
No, I mean, how crazy. We talked about it all, and I don't know. I certainly didn't know that part of the backstory. I
don't think anyone knew.
Yeah,
I don't know how many guys on the team knew.
Yeah, I didn't know that part of this. Exactly. Right. But so we thought about Rahmir all week in the sense that, oh, he's coming home and it's cool. We talked about it in the podcast before. Like, oh, look, there's the building that he was born in. And the full circle moment of, Rhule talking about that, and his mom had passed away in November. I mean, that's crazy. And he wins the freaking MVP. He may have had his best game as a Husker in his final game in his backyard. Like, I mean, it's
certainly his most impactful game, and the most impactful way you could finish a game. How long has it been since Nebraska has been able to salt away a victory? Since Nebraska has taken the ball with an opportunity to run out the clock and not given it back to the opponent, or in similar fashion, had an opportunity to win a game or tie a game at the end and fallen flat. It feels like it's been Rahmir Johnson's entire career. I know it hasn't been that long, but that's what it felt like on Saturday at Yankee Stadium when the Huskers got the ball with 4 minutes and 11 seconds left.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a list that, so this guy on Twitter, Sumanji Eric, he does the list of basically all the times that Nebraska had an opportunity to take the ball. They had the ball to drive down the field and grab a win or tie the football game. And they had only won one of those games in their last 35 attempts at doing that, or something like that. I mean, it was nuts. Now, this wouldn't follow that exact situation, but it does speak to your point, Mitch, of like, I mean, Nebraska's been in that situation a lot, and they've stepped in their own, they've stubbed their toe a lot. And for that run too, I mean, the fourth down run, the going for it, the fourth down run of like, we're gonna freaking give it to Rahmir, and then he bowls over a guy. And I mean, it was perfect. It was a heck of a way to end that game.
Ty Robinson as a fullback on that play. He's in there leading the way. 6th-year senior for 6th-year senior. One on offense, one on defense, both playing, lining up in the I formation. Matt Rhule told Rahmir before that play, when the play call came in and it was 4th and 1, Dylan, well, we'll get to this, but he slid too soon on the 3rd down play and didn't move the chains. So Rhule tells Johnson, get the first down, hold on to the ball, and let's finish this thing right. And, he's not just talking about the game. Like, he's not just talking about let's finish the game right. But let's finish this season right. Let's finish this drive right for once. And clearly for Rahmir Johnson is let's finish your career right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Think about what he's been through. Think about coming to Nebraska as a kid from New York City in 2019, and you're here for a year, and the world gets shut down, and you're 1,300 miles from home. And, then you go through all of the crap that he endured with injuries and a coaching change and an offensive change that didn't necessarily favor his style of play, and the injury last year when he was just 3 games into the season that seemingly could have ended his career. And Nebraska recruits Dante Dowdell to come in and be the guy that we saw Rahmir be on Saturday to ice this game.
Yeah.
So, after Dowdell goes into the portal, just weeks ago.
He
So,
outlasted him. Like, he's been here. Dowdell was here for less than a year, outlasted him. And like you said, I mean, it's very likely that in that exact situation, now, they're probably going to hand it off to Rahmir in that situation because of the circumstances of where the game was and all of that. But like, in a real game, in a real scenario, that's Dante Dowdell's ball. Like they're handing it to him, and they're telling him to go run over the guy.
I think they do it in that game too. If Dante's there, I mean, that's not the moment to be sentimental right there. That's the moment to win the game, and you go with your best option. Now, I think Nebraska was sentimental in the first half when Rahmir got the ball on the 4-yard line on the opening play of the second quarter, and that is why I picked Rahmir to score the first points of the
great call by you.
Bowl. May have been the only one that I got right in that game, but I did get that one right. But you get to the end, and I think that ball is probably going to Dante Dowdell in most situations. In fact, I'm kind of surprised it didn't go to Rahmir Johnson, but you gave it to the 5'10", 200-pound guy, 10-pound guy, or 200-pound guy, and he powered his way through the line and got 11 yards, got himself to 1,000, and got Nebraska a victory.
That is beautiful. So 7-6. I just did the there is a website called timeanddate.com, and you can calculate how many days are in between days. So Nebraska's last bowl game victory, December 26, 2015, in the Foster Farms Bowl, that was 3,291 days ago.
Yeah. Mike Riley with a 5-7 team there in 2015, getting it done against UCLA. All right. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the special teams because I think that's something that's on everybody's mind at the end of this football season. What Matt Rhule said about it after the game and what we saw on Saturday at Yankee Stadium. That's coming up next. All right, Mitch Sherman here to tell you about Rocket Money. I want to ask you this question. Do you have any subscriptions that you've forgotten about or that you might be overpaying for? If the answer is yes, Rocket Money can make it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It helps you monitor your spending. It helps you lower bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit in the calendar year 2025. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions today. Reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon.
Welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you. Nebraska wins the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl 20-15 today. Mitch was there. I'm sure he noticed, like everyone else watching on TV, the DJ and somewhere in right center field on a lawnmower DJing.
No.
You didn't notice that?
Not really. I heard mower noises coming over the Yankee Stadium PA. They did that before the game. They were just playing mower noises.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
That was the perk of being at the game. You only got that if you were there.
They cut to the ESPN sideline reporter, and she's on the mower with the guy who's doing a DJ set. Another thing that you missed if you were at the game, you missed the list of places where Dana Holgerson went after he got fired.
No. I saw that.
He went so many places.
Oh, we need to devote an episode to that, I think, this week. There's some places you went that were a little surprising, made the list.
Yeah.
I felt like Tulsa was going to be on the list as I started looking through the list, and I saw a couple, Salt Lake City. You went to Salt Lake City. But then there were some, we'll get to that later.
I didn't
Yes.
know he was I didn't know he was like, I could see him being tropical, but Tulum, Paris, like
There's like tropical Dana, and then there's like
went to
like
the French Riviera. Like, what the
nobody.
hell is he doing in the French Riviera?
What does Dana Holgerson even look like in the French Riviera? Like his hair, you got the flow. Like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we could definitely dedicate a segment to that. But that's maybe for a different time. So
Yeah, let's talk about special teams.
20-15. Let's talk about special teams. Rhule said after the game, Mitch, that it needs a total overhaul, and
A complete and total overhaul, to quote the
a
coach.
complete and total overhaul. What might that look like in the coming days, weeks, and months?
Well, Nebraska's already got a new long snapper. Nebraska's already got a new punter. Nebraska's kicking situation is not necessarily a big issue. So what are you going to overhaul at this point if your personnel seems to be coming into focus for the 2025 season? I think it's safe to say that there are some coaching assignments that will be shuffled, changed, perhaps coaches moved out of positions. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say that Ed Foley is probably not going to be coaching the special teams in 2025.
That felt like, it wasn't a confirmation of it, obviously, but like I think people were looking to hear that, oh, hey, trust me, like we're going to get rid of Ed. Like he's not going to do that publicly, but him saying, hey, look, we're going to do a complete and total overhaul is basically saying that. So like, I think I know people were looking at the game and they're like, well, why hasn't it happened yet? How is it still not happened?
Mm-hmm.
And once again, we'll repeat this on this podcast because we've said it before. Just because they do it doesn't fix Nebraska's special teams. They've been through many special teams coordinators and many different operations, and they've all sort of looked like this. So they have to figure it out as well. But what they have right now is clearly not working. So yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear him say that so definitively. You don't generally hear a coach make those kind of comments in the wake of a game or even immediately after a season. And this was on a stage with Troy Dannon over on standing on the side and Dr. Jeffrey Gold, the president of the university system, in the room. So yeah, I think we're going to see some big changes in how Nebraska runs its special teams. Now, does that mean that Ed Foley won't be a part of the program? No. Nebraska can find some kind of a role for him. I saw a joke on social media after the game this was during the on-field celebration, and I don't know if there was a mowing element to this, but it said Ed Foley is in the mower now. So
like a toaster Pop-Tarts Bowl reference.
Yeah, did somebody go in the toaster or in the pop? I mean, what a game that was. The Pop-Tarts Bowl was amazing.
Yeah.
But Iowa State, shout out Iowa State, 11 wins in 2024. Beat Miami.
Definitely some conversation we had about Cam Ward playing and then not playing.
Did he opt out for the second half?
He opted out because he was only playing because he wanted to break a record and then quit. That's totally normal. Definitely no conversation we had about that. I will say, like, today was not on the special teams. Today was not a day that was very conducive to good special teams play. I mean, it was really messy out there. Well, with that being said, we didn't see anything that happened at Yankee Stadium today that wouldn't have happened in clean conditions either. There was bad snaps. There was a block punt. Like, it was the whole thing.
Hey, Boston College is a very bad special teams organization. Boston College struggles to punt. Boston College can't kick field goals, as we saw in the first quarter of the game. And that's why Boston College just went for it on fourth down.
Mm-hmm.
And
a lot.
And went 0 for 4 on fourth down. So this was like a battle between who could be the first team not to have a catastrophic mistake on special teams. And Nebraska's just, we're going to gunsling. We're going to go for it. Forget the blocked extra point. I felt like that was like a comedic moment. I mean, yeah, you'd like to see it be 14-0 at that point, but Nebraska was very much controlling the game. And I felt like it might be 27-2 or 27-0, 28-0 if you make your extra points before, anything was even allowed to go all that wrong for Nebraska on special teams. So 13-2, it didn't feel all that all that awful. But, then Nebraska just decides to fake a punt. And sometimes if you gamble enough in one phase of the game, you're going to have success. And Brian Buschini has the knack for that. And look who he found. Isaac Gifford. That's the receiver that you'd expect to catch a fake punt. So that worked. They get 8 yards, and they double down on the same drive that you faked a punt. They faked a field goal. I don't know if that's advisable. And I'm not just simply sitting here and saying that with the perspective in the hindsight of knowing that it didn't work and really didn't even come close to working, because Buschini would have had to have juked about half of the Boston College defensive line to get 5 yards. He did not do it. In fact, what I thought was much more likely to happen in that scenario was that he was going to fumble and there was going to be a scoop and score touchdown, because how often has Brian Buschini carried the football and been hit by FBS defensive players?
Mm-hmm.
Not too much, if ever. So good for Brian for holding on to the football and not giving up a touchdown in that moment. But Nebraska had it 1st and goal at the 5 in that situation. So this isn't just all on the special teams. Should have just run the ball, run it 3 or 4 times. You're going to get in the way they were moving it on the ground.
Yeah, the fake field goal was pretty projected at that point, because Nebraska's history to that point of having horrible snapping issues was well documented. So they didn't feel confident about the operation enough to actually kick the damn thing. And so they were going to. Now, like, what's so funny, like you said, Mitch, wouldn't you just be better off playing your odds and putting the offense out there and having them try to get a couple yards rather than actually doing the operation to kick the field goal, but then running a variation of it? Like, you can't be a bad special teams operation and do fakes all the time.
No.
Like, you're going to be horrible at the fakes. So, like, Nebraska's actually pulled off a couple fakes this year. But I guess 2 that I can remember well. One in the Rutgers game and then this one.
It just reinforces, like, that it's kind of a clown show on special teams. And that's unfortunate. That's really unfortunate, because Nebraska has been a good defensive group all season, and they're making the kind of progress with Dana Holgorsen and Dylan Raiola as a freshman quarterback that you'd like to see on the offensive side. So complete and total overhaul to come. We'll see what that looks like. I would imagine it's going to bring about some staff changes.
We'll put a bow on this one when we come back. We'll talk about Dylan Raiola's emotional last few plays. We'll get to that when we return on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. All right, before that, though, it's Happer here for the FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL playoffs are nearly here, but it's not too late to get in on the action right now with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel, they have so many ways for you to pick up W's as we head into the postseason. You can take a look at the spreads and the totals and all the things like that. But it gets a little tricky in the latter weeks of the NFL season. So why not anytime touchdown scores or first-time touchdown scores? And maybe you could parlay those together game by game. Not a bad option for you. There's plenty of them on the FanDuel Sportsbook. That's what they are all about. And once again, new customers, if you join today, you get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com today. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, back with you for segment number 3 on this Saturday night, or whenever you may be consuming this episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. I am in New York. Connor Happer from 1620 The Zone in Omaha. He is in Omaha. We will finish up and talk about Dylan Raiola. Actually, first, let's finish with Dylan, but let's first get to what was the point for Nebraska in much of what it did in the month of December on the practice field, and that was to get. And Dylan Raiola is one of these guys, although he's a young player. He's not one of the guys who was getting extra work necessarily in the month of December. They wanted to get extra work for players like. Did you see Donovan Jones?
Donovan Jones was out there a lot.
Donovan Jones, who redshirted this year, played 4 games out of Omaha North. 5th game today, does not mean that he loses his red shirt. Bowl games do not count toward the 4-game maximum that you're allowed to play in the regular season. So he'll be a redshirt freshman next year. He played about half the game at corner opposite Sierra Wright, and played pretty well. So there were some others. Did you see Keona Davis flash at one point and cause he had a hurry, caused an incompletion? We saw Willis McGahee, the fourth, make several plays. We saw Vincent Shavers, who's been really good this year. He was all over the field. This is the newest black shirt. Shavers in his number 1, got a black shirt in practice, but he was everywhere.
I sort of felt like Shavers made sometime in the last month made that jump from freshman to sophomore. He looked like super confident in the Pinstripe Bowl. He made his presence known right away. I saw some Caleb Benning out there
3
later
tackles
in the game.
Yeah.
He had a couple tackles. Any other young guys that we need to shout out? You mentioned McGahee already.
Yeah, looking down the tackle list, Riley Van Poppel played, I think, more in this game than he played at any point during the season. He's going to be a key piece for Nebraska on the defensive line in 2025. Quentin Ives got his first touchdown as a Husker. He's a second-year player, a redshirt freshman. So we'll see as the spring goes on, what's his role going to be. You lose Rahmir Johnson, obviously, in that running back group. Emmett Johnson is back. Ives will be the guy with the second most amount of experience, and that's a very limited amount of experience. So Huskers have some additions coming at the running back position too. But opportunity for Quentin Ives to build on what he did, and I think that's the case across the board for Nebraska's young players. Even the guys you didn't see much in this game, they got those 3 weeks of practice, and that's something that Nebraska has just been sorely lacking over the last few years.
And you know what? One of the things that we talked about going into the game was okay, what is 3 or 4 more weeks of Dana Holgorsen look like? I mean, Nebraska took a lot of shots down the field. Jamal Banks was really good. I mean, he was getting
the drop touchdown. He was
getting interfered with constantly. But I thought he was pretty good. And
4 catches for 79 yards for Banks.
Yep. There was some more Luke Lindenmeyer in that game. Thomas Fedoni, I thought, was consistent. They hit him more consistently at 5
nice game.
catches?
5 catches for 50 yards. Yeah. Heinrich Harburg had a catch for 8 yards. I thought Nebraska has done a nice job of using the tight ends in the final 4 games of the season, which is interesting because the former offensive coordinator is and was the tight ends coach. But maybe he's been able to, Marcus Satterfield has been able to focus more on how those tight ends are going to be used and getting that involved in the offensive game plan. If you want to believe that, or if you just want to believe that it's Dana Holgorsen, that's fine too. But Luke Lindenmeyer, we talked about Fedoni with 5 catches. Harburg made an impact. And I think we're going to see a lot more of Carter Nelson, obviously, after an offseason in the program.
Yep. Okay. So eventful last drive. I mean, Dylan Raiola, 23 of 31, 228, a touchdown, throws the pick, which I don't know what happened on the first drive of the game where he just tossed it up.
It was really underthrown, and Banks, that end of the field was very wet, and Banks fell down, and it was a bad throw. Even if he hadn't fallen down, he might have been able to come back and break it up. But anyway, take that interception out of it, and it was a very good day for Dylan. Eventful at the end.
Yeah, so let's fast forward ahead to that final drive before the kneel downs, before the Rahmir Johnson run, which got him the first down, which allowed them the ability to kneel it down and finish it off. Raiola pulls the ball. Rhule was impressed by the fact that he kind of seemed to really want it in his hand, wanted to go take it at the end of the game. Pulled it twice on a couple of read plays, and slid late. Was hit, his head bashed into the ground, got up, and just kind of hovered over the defender as much as really got in his face, started a skirmish a little bit. A lot going on there.
Yeah. It was a 5-yard gain, and it was a first down play. It didn't change necessarily the pace or much of what happened on the drive. Nebraska wasn't trying to score on that drive. It was just trying to eat clock and get first downs. So it got a first down because of the 15-yard penalty, which I didn't think was an egregious call. Bill O'Brien didn't seem to agree with that call, the Boston College coach. I I've not rewatched the game yet. My understanding is that the ABC announcers did not agree with that call. And I think if you have an issue with it, it's because Dylan slid late. As a quarterback, you're not allowed to be hit when you slide. You're giving yourself up. But if you slide when the defender is already starting to come at you, clearly there's nothing that the defensive player can do to prevent the contact. So I don't think it was egregious. Like the defensive player was parallel to the ground when Dylan went into his slide, but I could see where if you're on the other side of that and you're Nebraska, you might kind of shrug your shoulders and raise your arms and say, what is our guy supposed to do? He didn't hit him in the head. It wasn't a malicious kind of hit. And it led to 15 yards. It put Nebraska in a better spot to be able to run out the clock after that 15-yard penalty.
If you're Nebraska, and it doesn't get called, you're probably incensed because
I think so.
Because your quarterback hit his head on the ground. I mean, that's the type of stuff that, we talk about all the time in the sport, like the overprotection of quarterbacks, and all of a sudden we're not calling that. So, I think it's a no-win situation. Both somebody was going to have to be mad. In this case, it was Bill O'Brien.
I mean, there were pass interference calls. There were pass interference violations that went uncalled throughout this game.
I could not believe the one where they ended up calling the hands to the face on Ben Scott, and Jamal Banks was just getting ripped down to the ground.
Well, he caught the ball, I believe, on that play. Like I turned to
back and they're like, oh, okay, wow, they're gonna get him for a personal foul. Like, all right, geez, little excessive there. And then no, there was like, it's on Ben Scott. I'm like, what the heck is going on? How did you see that and not see that? What happened?
Yeah. There was an obvious OPI on BC, where Malcolm Hartzog was actually injured by the Boston College receiver attempting to just play defense on a ball that Grayson James threw up in the air, and that was uncalled. They went into the game, the officials, and were just going to let these guys play. There weren't many penalties except for a couple. They loved hands to the face, but other than that, a motion penalty here or there. And that was it. I guess that's maybe the mentality of an officiating crew when you get into a bowl game with a 6-6 and a 7-5 team. It's like, let these guys duke it out on the field. And they did make the call that benefited Nebraska against Raiola late. And then there was the second slide from Dylan where this is just an experience thing because he's not used to carrying the ball. Now, he threw the ball for more yards than any freshman in Nebraska football history. He's experienced at going through his reads and diagnosing a defense. He's not experienced at getting first downs with his feet, and he'll get better at this. And I'm sure it's something that he'll work on in the offseason, but it's 3rd and 2, and Nebraska's getting close to the 2-minute timeout here at the end. It basically needs one more first down to ice the game. And Dylan gets loose out of the pocket. It was probably the right read to pull that one. That's where he's got to dive forward. And, you hope that he holds onto the ball, obviously, but he slid. And when you slid, the ball's going to get spotted where the ball is, not where your feet are. And he was clearly short. So that's what put Nebraska in the situation.
Yeah, you just put you put the ball behind your feet. It's just it's why you slide head first in baseball, right? It's like, I have the opportunity to put my hand on the base. So yeah, he's done that a few times this year, just slid a little bit early. I will say about his reaction to the first slide, I think there's an element to, getting up and getting on the guy and your teammates are going to come to your back and all that stuff. But I don't know, just like sort of, and he clearly wanted it in that situation, but I don't know. I didn't love that.
No, it's an emotional thing. And I think it's a little bit of emotional immaturity. And I mean, Dylan's a mature guy and you talk to him off the field, like the way that he handles himself has been as good as any young quarterback. I mean, it's as good as any veteran quarterback as far as the way that he's handled himself away from the field. But in the moment where the emotions are high in a game, again, like sliding on the second slide, his reaction on the first one is just that he hasn't been in that situation a lot. And he doesn't quite know how to react. He took a hit. All of the juices are flowing at that point because you do not want to give the ball back to Boston College. And I think that the emotions just got the best of him.
I do appreciate him bringing a little, because that's one thing that we've sort of got on him about this year, like how nonchalant he is. Like, so I
brought fire on that drive.
Yeah. He brought the juice to the table in that one. So maybe in the long run, it's a good thing for him to just feel like he's in that. In the moment, I didn't love it, but he definitely, that was a different version of Dylan Raiola at the end of that game, which served Nebraska well ultimately.
You got to take the good with the bad. Like, that's going to turn into more good than bad. The older that he gets in his sophomore year, I think you'll see a change there. But right now, he's still learning that stuff, and he's still learning how to be, that leader. He's projected that through the season. He runs out of the tunnel first. He does all the appearances and everything like that. But in the fabric of the team, I think there's some things that he's still learning as far as how to be that guy to get his teammates fired up, and he's trying very hard, and you can see it there that he's trying to take it to the next level. It was evident on that last drive.
All right, Mitch, countdown's on to Kansas City, late August. We have a lot of ground to cover to get there, and we'll do it day by day here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Appreciate you guys listening. And making this your first listen. Your second listen needs to be the Locked On Big Ten podcast. You can find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Talk to you soon.